the way I see the spirit plane, and this is just me talking, these are based on my revelations, that there's a lower astral plane and there's an upper or a higher astral plane. The higher astral plane goes from my vantage point, goes all the way to God. And down from God a little bit are the archangels, and then down from the archangels are the angels, and then down from the angels are the ascended masters and really, really beautiful angelic souls who may not have gotten their wings yet. They're not quite angels, but they're on, they're ready to get their wings, so to speak. And that would be the 7th layer of the aura, or the upper astral plane. Right below that, we move into what I call the lower astral plane, but it's really what I call the upper part of the lower astral plane, where you're going to have beings that are, as in the Yes song, all good people. I've seen all good people turn their heads. They're all good people. They haven't really, They haven't done anything bad. They haven't hurt. They haven't murdered anybody. They haven't stolen anything. They haven't really done anything bad. But they still have some issues to work out. They still have some neuroses. They still not making the best decisions when they're on Earth in terms of relationships and how they treat themselves and other people and children, etc., etc. So that's the upper part of the lower astral plane, and then you go down into the lower astral plane to the middle of the lower astral plane, and there you're going to find some again, beings that haven't murdered anybody or committed serious crimes, but they may be drug addicts, they may be alcoholics who just are abusing themselves, hurting themselves, and they're suffering, but they're not bad souls. So that would be sort of in the middle of the lower astral plane, and then you go down to the bottom of the lower astral plane, which is right above where the human aura starts, the 5th layer. That's where the human aura starts. So those spirits are really evil, and they've done the worst possible stuff on Earth, and they're a lot of times they're hanging out right above the where the human aura starts, and whether or not that actual human who's still on Earth, it's really up to their consciousness. If they're an evil consciousness, then those evil beings on the lowest part of the lower astral, they may communicate. When someone on Earth says the devil made me do it, and then they do terrible things, that's kind of what they're drinking alcohol on Earth and taking drugs, and they're attracting like spirits that are just hanging out right above the 5th layer of their aura, and so they're being haunted. They're whispering dark, evil stuff in their ear, and they're going to do evil stuff or potentially do evil stuff. If the person on Earth has, a relatively, even-keeled and good conscience, or a good person, then they'll probably, if they have spirits that are hanging around, it might be their parents, their grandparents who passed away, who are also not angelic. They're not ready to ascend, but they're still good spirits, and they're guardians. They look after. If you're a relatively good human being, you'll have those kind of guardian spirits looking after you. They're not always around, but if you're constantly thinking about them and you miss your grandfather who passed away and he was the best thing in your life, then he's got one ear always listening for you. When you burn a candle and keep his photo by your bed. If the person on Earth is really a good soul, they'll have angels and archangels looking out for them, guarding them and giving them messages and information and psychic phenomenon. Because your consciousness is so high, you're getting the angels and the archangels, with one ear always listening and talking to you. If you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's always a 2-week period at least where the spirit body is detaching and disassociating from the energy body, the physical energy body. And even that, at that point, that spirit may also want to hang around for their funeral and for the wake, and sitting Shiva, if he's Jewish, or whatever they do in the Muslim community and other indigenous communities. That spirit may hang around, and depending on how much suffering of the people who loved that person who are still on earth, that spirit may hang around for a long time and sort of be on call, be listening, have one ear listening to the suffering of the people, still on earth in living. When, for some souls where there's not that much, unfortunately, they haven't really created a lot of goodwill. When they were alive, there may be only a few people, if that are really, thinking about them after the funeral. So at that point, that spirit may just say, well, there's nobody crying for me on earth, so let me get my lessons, let me talk to the guides here, let's figure out if I need to reincarnate right away, get back on the wheel, the karmic wheel, and start cleaning up some of my dark energies and practices, or that spirit may be given a rest period, a limbo period. There may be even go to classes, schools up there to trainings to teach that person certain ways to keep rising, to keep raising their consciousness, so that eventually they could move into the more angelic realms. So every situation is different. A lot of it depends on who, what kind of soul and how he passed, and what his state of consciousness was, what his emotional body was. So there's a lot of factors here. If it was a natural death, there's going to be some peace, and there's going to be, a lot of, depending on the people who cared about him, before he passed, if he's in a good state because he passed naturally, then there might be quite a long period actually of that spirit hanging around, and just keeping the suffering living people who still care and remember and are suffering emotionally for the loss. That kind of spirit can hang around, and it could be a very peaceful, could almost be like a guardian spirit. And eventually that spirit will get their instructions and get a life and a reincarnational history review, an Akashic record review, and then decisions will be made eventually for their next incarnation, or whether or not they're gonna maybe have a role, since they're maybe a good soul, they could rise up to higher levels of the spirit plane and become, an angel or an overseer of souls in hospitals and the sick people, etc., etc. So either a person could keep reincarnating, or they could, if they're really ready to advance to more angelic realms, they could be given overseer roles of suffering beings still on earth, and they could stay in spirit plane. If they're really advanced, they could actually go into archangel training, and eventually maybe really become God's right at the foot of God, and really important decisions that are made. Anyway, but if the soul was a troubled soul, and of course depending on the age, if somebody of course is very elderly and they were also sick, then they pass, it's not as tragic obviously as if it's a young person. And if the let's say if the person was really troubled, alcohol, drugs, or crime, or toxic relationships and violence, etc. So when that person passes, they're not ready to go to the light. They're not ready to go to the light. They may hang around, and depending on their relationships of the people still living on Earth, there may be some spirit guides up there going, "Hey, man, you need to," or "Woman, you need to, apologize telepathically to the people you hurt, and come to grips with what with what you've done. And if there are people down there that you haven't really hurt but love you and really suffered with you being in so much trouble and causing so much trouble with other people, then their hearts are going to keep going out to you on the spirit plane. And so there's a lot of potential for a spirit to hang around. That's pretty much in a nutshell the way I see things working.